You've met someone who barely said 10 words, and yet something about them made you want to stay. They didn't try to impress you. They weren't dressed expensively, but in the way they spoke, calm, measured, honest, you felt something rare. That quiet gravity that makes you think, I can trust this person. We often think attraction comes from beauty, power, or confidence. But in reality, it comes from character, and character is revealed in words. Today, you'll learn 6 simple words that silently expose who a person really is. No manipulation, no psychology tricks, just language as the mirror of the soul. And here's the twist, the 4th word, the smallest and most powerful of them all, is the one most people fear to say. And it might be the reason others lose respect for you without realizing it. Stay with me till the end. Because once you understand this, you'll never hear ordinary words the same way again. In our hyper-connected world, everyone talks, but few truly communicate. People chase attention, rehearse their image, and craft perfect versions of themselves online. But behind the filters and the flawless words, there's something language always betrays, the truth of character. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, and thoughts, eventually, bleed into speech." That's why language is never just noise. It's a moral fingerprint. This episode isn't about learning social tactics or charm. It's about understanding how every word you choose reveals your inner discipline, humility, courage, and empathy. We'll explore 6 words that expose or elevate your true nature. Sorry, the strength to admit fault, help, the instinct to serve, actually, the courage to speak truth, no, the boundary of integrity, congratulations, the test of generosity, understand, the language of empathy. Each word reflects a Stoic virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, or temperance. And by the end, you won't just learn to recognize these traits in others, you'll begin to practice them yourself. Because character isn't built in silence. It's built in the moments when you decide what to say and what to stay silent about. You can tell everything about a person by how they handle being wrong. Some people twist, defend, or disappear when confronted with their mistakes. Others, the rare few, look you in the eye and say, "I'm sorry, I was wrong." It's only 2 short sentences. Yet in those moments, the strength of one's character becomes unmistakable. I once watched a manager give a presentation to a room full of executives. Halfway through, she realized her financial data was completely off. The mistake wasn't small. It could have damaged her credibility, maybe even her career. Most people, in that moment, would try to hide it. They'd make excuses, blame a team member, pretend the numbers didn't matter. But she didn't. She stopped mid-sentence, took a breath, and said quietly, "I'm sorry. I was wrong about those numbers. Let me pause and correct that." The room went silent, not with judgment, but with respect. Because truth, when spoken with humility, commands more power than perfection ever could. In that instant, she showed something that no resume or degree can capture: emotional courage. She valued accuracy over ego, truth over image, responsibility over fear. And that's exactly what the Stoics meant when they spoke of wisdom and virtue. Epictetus taught, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. To admit a mistake is to open the door to growth. To cling to pride is to remain ignorant, chained to illusion." We live in a culture obsessed with appearing flawless. People carefully curate their online lives, polish every flaw, and hide every weakness. But perfection is brittle. It cracks under pressure. Humility, on the other hand, is resilient. It bends, it learns, it endures. That's why genuine apologies are magnetic. They reveal 3 rare qualities: 1. Security. The person who apologizes sincerely isn't fragile. They're grounded enough to admit imperfection. 2. Honesty. They care more about reality than appearances. 3. Maturity. They take full ownership of their actions, even when it hurts. When someone says, "I'm sorry," but that's not an apology. That's a negotiation with their ego. The word "but" erases everything that came before it. True strength sounds like, "I was wrong. I take responsibility. I'll do better." No excuses. No deflection. No justification. Just truth. Raw, unpolished, and human. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself every morning, if someone shows you your fault, do not take it badly, for you were not born to be perfect, but to improve. Think about that. Even an emperor, with absolute power, practiced the art of saying "I was wrong," because admitting mistakes isn't a sign of weakness. It's proof of self-control. Now, look around in your own life. Who are the people you respect most? Chances are, they're not the ones who always have the right answers, but the ones who can admit when they don't. A real apology builds trust faster than flawless behavior. Why? Because it proves that honesty outweighs pride. When someone owns their errors, you instinctively feel safe with them. You know they won't lie to protect themselves. You know they'll face discomfort to protect the truth. In relationships, in leadership, in friendship, that kind of integrity is magnetic. People follow it, not because it's loud, but because it's rare. The Stoics called this courage of the soul. It's not about fighting others. It's about confronting the hardest enemy, your own ego. The ability to say sorry without defense is an act of moral bravery, one that separates the wise from the foolish, the authentic from the pretended. So the next time you make a mistake, pause before the excuses form. Ask yourself, am I protecting my ego or protecting the truth? Then choose the harder path, the one that leads to growth. Because in a world obsessed with being right, the most powerful words you can ever say might simply be, "I was wrong." When was the last time you respected someone more because they admitted their mistake? Or the last time you did? If sorry reveals humility, then help reveals humanity. You can tell the depth of a person's character not by how they behave when they need something, but by how they act when someone else does. We live in a world where everyone is busy. Eyes locked on screens, minds buried in deadlines, hearts closed behind invisible walls of stress. In such a world, noticing someone else's struggle is becoming a lost art. That's why the word "help," when offered without being asked, is so powerful. It's more than a word. It's a moral instinct. It says, "I see you." It says, "Your burden matters to me." I remember attending a crowded conference a few years ago. I was juggling a laptop bag, a stack of papers, and a coffee cup. The classic picture of a professional slowly collapsing in public. People walked past without even noticing. They were polite, even friendly, but their attention was somewhere else. Emails, schedules, notifications. Then one person stopped, smiled, and said simply, "Can I help you carry something?" That small moment, just 5 words, changed the entire atmosphere. There was no agenda, no networking angle, no "what's in it for me," just presence, awareness, humanity. The Stoics believed that the purpose of life was to live in harmony with nature, and part of that nature is our interdependence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We were born to work together, like feet, like hands, like eyelids." When someone offers help without being asked, they're living that truth. They're acting in alignment with the natural order of things. They've trained their awareness to extend beyond the self, and that's what makes them magnetic. Because in a world driven by self-promotion, service is rebellion. It's the quiet revolution of those who still believe compassion is strength, But there's a difference between performing kindness and embodying kindness. The first one expects recognition. The second one simply acts. You can see it in small details. The coworker who stays late to help you finish your project, not because it's their job, but because they care. The friend who checks in when you're silent, not just when you're fun to be around. The stranger who holds the door when your hands are full. These gestures seem ordinary, but they build trust, warmth, and connection faster than 1,000 clever words ever could. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." That's not just poetic, it's practical. It means every moment offers a choice, to notice or to ignore, to give or to withhold, to act or to pass by. When someone's first instinct is to say, "Can I help?" it tells you everything. It reveals awareness. They're paying attention. It reveals empathy. They feel what others feel. And it reveals integrity. They act on what they notice. That's emotional intelligence in its highest form. Because empathy without action is sentiment. Action without empathy is obligation. But when both unite, that's virtue. The Stoic ideal of right reason in motion. Helping others isn't weakness or self-sacrifice. It's a declaration. I am aware of something beyond myself. It's wisdom disguised as kindness. The irony is, those who give selflessly end up gaining the most. They earn trust, respect, and connection that can't be faked. And they inspire others to do the same. Virtue spreads quietly, one act at a time. So look around. Notice the small struggles. A colleague overwhelmed, a friend silently anxious, a stranger lost. Ask yourself, can I make this moment lighter for someone? Then act, not for applause, not for reward, but because you can. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, what is not good for the hive cannot be good for the bee. Helping others is helping yourself. It strengthens your soul, polishes your character, draws people toward you, not through manipulation, but through natural gravity. In the end, people don't remember how successful you were. They remember how safe they felt around you. And often, that safety begins with a simple, effortless word, help. When was the last time you offered help before being asked? And how did it change the connection between you and that person? Truth is uncomfortable. And that's why so few people defend it. Most people would rather stay like than be right. They hear misinformation, nod politely, and move on, because correcting it might cause tension. But occasionally, you meet someone who can't stay silent when falsehood stands. They'll say one quiet word, "Actually," and the whole energy of the room changes. I once saw this at a dinner party. A guest confidently shared a statistic about climate change that was completely wrong. Everyone nodded, pretending to agree, because no one wanted to ruin the vibe. Except one person. She waited for the right moment, then said calmly, "Actually, the latest data says something quite different." Her tone was gentle, her words precise. No arrogance, no ego. Just clarity, and suddenly, the conversation shifted from casual talk to genuine curiosity. She didn't gain anything from that correction. No status, no approval. In fact, she risked mild discomfort. But she couldn't allow inaccuracy to linger, because for her, truth mattered more than comfort. That, right there, is moral courage. The Stoics believed that truth is the foundation of virtue. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it's not true, don't say it. If it's not right, don't do it." They understood something modern life often forgets. When lies go unchallenged, they don't disappear, they spread. And yet, truth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to humiliate or dominate. It only needs to stand, firm, calm, and unbending, That's what makes the word actually so revealing. It shows who values integrity over popularity, who's willing to speak when silence would be easier. We live in an age where opinions are louder than facts, where being agreeable is often rewarded more than being honest. But think about it. If everyone avoids discomfort, who protects reality? The courage to say actually, politely, without condescension, is one of the rarest virtues left. It's not about being a know-it-all. It's about being a protector of clarity. The key lies in how it's said. A person with integrity corrects misinformation to serve truth, not to serve their ego. They don't humiliate others. They illuminate the conversation. Compared to versions. Actually, that's wrong. A blow to someone's pride actually. I read something different recently. Would you like to hear it? An invitation to think one divides, the other enlightens. The Stoic philosopher Seneca warned against intellectual arrogance. We should not aim to show how much we know, but how much we care for the truth. That's the balance of real strength, humility with precision. When someone consistently chooses honesty over comfort, you begin to trust them deeply. Because you know they won't flatter you for approval. They'll tell you what's true, not what's easy. In relationships, this honesty becomes a sanctuary. You can rely on them to say, actually, I think you might be wrong there, not to embarrass you, but to protect you from ignorance. In leadership, it builds credibility. People follow those who don't bend truth for convenience, even if they disagree. They respect the integrity, and in friendship, it creates depth. Because real connection isn't built on pretending, it's built on clarity. Truth tellers often feel lonely. They're sometimes misjudged as difficult or too blunt, but history and philosophy alike remind us those who guard truth shape progress. The Stoics call this living according to nature, and in nature, nothing thrives on illusion. The tree that grows straight and honest toward the light will always outlast the vine that twists to fit its surroundings. So when you meet someone who says actually, with gentleness and courage, you're not just hearing correction, you're witnessing the discipline of honesty. And if you're the one speaking that word, remember this: don't use it to win an argument. Use it to win back truth. Because popularity fades, but integrity stays. And in the end, the quietest voice in the room, the one that says actually with humility, is often the only one that history remembers. Have you ever stayed silent to avoid conflict, even when you knew the truth? What would have changed if you had spoken up? Of all the words that reveal true character, no is the one people fear most. From childhood, we're trained to please. Say yes to be liked. Say yes to avoid conflict. Say yes to seem kind. But the truth is, the ability to say no with grace is one of the rarest forms of strength. Most people associate no with rejection, but the Stoics saw it as something else, a declaration of self-respect. Epictetus once wrote, "Remember, it's not what others demand of you, but what you consent to. That determines your peace. Every time you say yes when you mean no, you trade a piece of your integrity for temporary approval. You lose energy, time, and authenticity, all to protect the illusion that you're agreeable. The irony is painful. The more you say yes to please others, the more they respect you less. Not because they're cruel, but because subconsciously, people sense when someone lacks boundaries. And without boundaries, there can be no trust. I saw this once at a corporate event. A group of colleagues were pressuring one man to stay out late drinking after a long workday. He had an early meeting the next morning and clearly didn't want to stay. The laughter grew louder, the teasing sharper. "You're no fun," they said. "Come on, just one more round." He smiled, finished his drink, and said simply, "No, I'm heading home. You guys enjoy the night." No long explanation, no guilt, no defensive tone, just calm finality. There was a brief silence, and then, Oddly enough, respect. He had drawn a line, and that line commanded quiet admiration. That's what happens when you can say no without guilt. It doesn't push people away. It makes them realize you can't be controlled. Marcus Aurelius warned about this trap of approval seeking. He said, if you try to please everyone, you will lose yourself. Choose to live according to reason, not applause. Saying no isn't selfish. It's clarity. It's knowing who you are, what you value, and what you can give without resentment. It's choosing depth over dilution. Think about how many people are exhausted not because of hard work, but because of unnecessary yeses. The yes to social invitations they don't enjoy. The yes to favors that drain their time. The yes to relationships that take but never give back. Every yes that isn't true becomes a quiet betrayal of the self. The Stoics believed peace begins where unnecessary desire ends. And people-pleasing is just another form of desire. The desire to be seen as good, kind, or agreeable. But genuine kindness doesn't require self-abandonment. A person with strong character can say no without cruelty, and mean it with calm conviction. Here's the paradox. Saying no to others is, in reality, saying yes to your values, yes to your priorities, yes to your sanity. And when you respect your own boundaries, others learn to respect them too. Not through argument, but through consistency. It's easy to say yes when everyone's watching. It's harder to say no when you might disappoint them. But that's where integrity lives. In the quiet moment when you honor what's right over what's easy. The world praises sacrifice but forgets that boundaries are a form of discipline. Without them, generosity turns to resentment, and resentment poisons even the kindest heart. There's a reason the Stoics value moderation. It's not about denying pleasure, but defining proportion. They knew that saying no to excess was saying yes to virtue. In your own life, notice the subtle guilt that rises when you want to refuse something. Ask yourself, am I afraid of losing approval? Or am I afraid of being authentic? Because those two fears cannot coexist. You either live to be accepted, or you live to be respected. Rarely both. Saying no doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. And clarity, when delivered with kindness, is magnetic. It draws people who value honesty, not compliance. People who can say no quietly, firmly, and consistently carry a kind of invisible authority. They aren't reactive. They don't need to explain. They know that peace doesn't come from pleasing everyone. It comes from being in harmony with your own principles. The next time you're tempted to say yes just to keep the peace, remember this. Peace bought by self-betrayal is just silence before the storm. So learn to say it clearly, kindly, and without apology. No, because in a world terrified of confrontation, those who can say no without guilt will always stand out, not as rebels, but as people of integrity. When was the last time you said yes when you wanted to say no? And how did it make you feel afterward? How someone reacts to your success reveals more about their character than how they treat you in failure. When you fall, people rush to comfort you. But when you rise, when life finally rewards your effort, that's when true character is tested. It's easy to sympathize with pain. It's harder to celebrate someone else's victory without comparing it to your own. That's why the word congratulations, when said with genuine joy, carries such weight. Because it exposes whether someone has peace inside, or quiet envy hiding beneath a smile. I once received a long-awaited promotion at work. The kind of achievement that felt like the culmination of years of effort, failure, and persistence. Most colleagues congratulated me, politely. Their tone was rehearsed, their smiles mechanical. The words, "I'm happy for you," sounded more like social protocol than emotion. But one person's reaction stood out. Her eyes lit up as if the success were her own. She said, "That's incredible. You've worked so hard for this. You truly deserve it." There was no trace of competition, Number attempt to downplay the moment. Only joy, pure and contagious. And that's when I realized people who can celebrate others sincerely are the freest of all. Because jealousy is a prison. It traps the mind in constant comparison. But gratitude and admiration liberate you from the need to measure your worth through others' wins. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you see someone doing well, rejoice, for their good fortune adds to the common good of humanity." That's not just moral advice, it's a psychological truth. When you celebrate others genuinely, your mind shifts from scarcity to abundance. You stop asking, "Why not me?" and start understanding, there's enough for all of us. Jealousy whispers that someone else's success diminishes yours. Wisdom knows the opposite. Every achievement around you is evidence that progress is possible. But most people never learn this. They disguise envy as critique. They say, "Congrats, but I hope you're ready for the pressure." Or, "Wow, lucky you," with that subtle undertone that poisons what should have been joy. Stoicism calls this what it is, a failure of perspective. Because when someone else wins, reality hasn't taken something from you. It's simply reminding you that success exists, that it can be earned, and that your turn will come. If you keep working in silence, to be happy for others is not just an act of kindness. It's a mark of inner stability. It says, "I'm complete enough not to be threatened by your growth." Seneca once wrote, "The wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not." And that's the heart of it. You cannot genuinely celebrate others unless you're at peace with your own life. When you meet someone who can say congratulations with sincere enthusiasm, remember, you're in the presence of someone secure, grounded, and generous in spirit. They've learned the rare art of joy without comparison. And when you become that person, you'll find life feels lighter. Instead of feeling excluded by others' success, you'll feel included in a shared human story of growth. You'll see someone achieve what you desire and think, "Good, proof that it's possible." That mindset transforms envy into inspiration. The Stoics would call this sympathia, the awareness that we're all connected, that another's progress enriches the whole. To celebrate others is to strengthen the fabric of community. So, when someone shares good news, pause before your ego reacts. Ask yourself, can I be happy for them, truly, without a single trace of comparison? Because if you can, you've already won something far greater than any promotion or recognition. You've mastered your emotions, and the person who can feel joy for others will never run out of reasons to be happy. So say it often. Say it fully. Say it like you mean it. Congratulations, not out of courtesy, but out of abundance. When was the last time you celebrated someone else's success with genuine happiness? And what did it teach you about yourself? In a noisy world, silence is rare. But what's even rarer is to be understood. Everyone talks. Few listen. Most people don't seek to understand. They seek to reply. They wait for their turn to speak, rehearsing their thoughts while you're still trying to share yours. That's why when someone says, "I understand," and truly means it, it feels like an anchor in the middle of a storm. I remember going through one of the most uncertain times in my life, a crossroad where every decision felt heavy and every outcome felt wrong. Friends tried to cheer me up with quick solutions. Stay positive. Everything happens for a reason. Don't overthink it. They meant well, but each word made me feel more alone, because advice wasn't what I needed. Understanding was. Then one friend did something different. She didn't interrupt. She didn't preach. She just listened. After a long silence, she said quietly, "I understand why this feels impossible. You're trying to do the right thing, but both choices hurt." Those words didn't fix anything, but they made everything later. Because in that moment, I felt seen. not judged. That's the power of understanding. It doesn't solve problems. It heals the space between people. The Stoics often get mistaken for being cold, emotionless, detached. But true Stoicism was never about shutting down emotion. It was about mastering it so you could be fully present for others. Marcus Aurelius, often called the philosopher king, wrote, "When you understand the motives of others, you will cease to be angry with them." That is empathy in its purest form. To understand doesn't mean to excuse. It means to see clearly, without the fog of judgment. When someone says, "I understand genuinely," it reveals three rare traits. 1. Patience. They listen longer than most people are comfortable with. 2. Humility. They don't rush to prove they know more. They simply absorb. 3. Strength. They can hold in others pain without making it about themselves. This is emotional maturity at its highest level, the ability to remain centered while others unravel. The modern world trains us to perform empathy, not practice it. We post quotes about kindness, use the right words, but rarely give the one thing empathy demands most: our full attention. Real understanding requires effort. It means setting aside your need to fix, advise, or compare. It means asking, what is this person really trying to tell me beyond their words? When you can do that, you can act on a level most people never reach. Because to understand someone deeply is to say, you don't have to explain who you are. I already see you. The Stoics call this the virtue of justice, giving each person what they are due. And what every human being is due, more than anything else, is to be understood before being judged. Empathy, in the Stoic sense, isn't emotional softness. It's disciplined compassion. It's choosing to look at another's struggle without adding your ego to it. It's listening, not to respond, but to connect. Imagine how many conflicts in families, friendships, even nations would dissolve if people truly tried to understand instead of winning arguments. Understanding is the bridge between reason and emotion. It's where logic meets humanity, and it's contagious. The more you practice it, the more people around you begin to mirror it. You make the world quieter, kinder, and more human. One conversation at a time, Epictetus said. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, that we can listen twice as much as we speak. That single line could transform the modern world. Because the truth is, most people don't need advice. They need acknowledgement. They need someone who won't rush to fix them, but will simply sit beside them in their confusion and say, I get it. That's why understand is perhaps the most beautiful of all 6 words. It reveals empathy without ego, strength without dominance, love without possession, and those who master it become a refuge, the kind of person others feel safe around, not because they have answers, but because they offer space. To understand another human being is to practice philosophy at its highest level, not in books, but in the soul. The next time someone opens up to you, resist the urge to fill the silence. Let your stillness speak louder than words. Then, when you finally say, I understand, say it like you mean it, not as comfort, but as connection. Because in the end, to understand is the purest form of love. When was the last time someone truly understood you? And how did it change the way you saw them? Let's take a step back. 6 words, 6 windows into the soul. The strength to admit you're wrong. Help, the instinct to serve without reward. Actually, the quiet courage to defend truth. No, the boundary that protects your peace. Congratulations, the freedom from envy. Understand, the depth of empathy. 6 simple words. Yet together they reveal everything about a person's moral architecture. Think about it. Every great leader, a friend, or a partner you've ever admired embodies these words. They may not be wealthy, beautiful, or powerful, but they speak and act with alignment between word, thought, and deed. That's what makes them magnetic. Because we don't fall in love with perfection. We're drawn to authenticity. We're drawn to those who are secure enough to admit mistakes, brave enough to speak truth, strong enough to say no, and wise enough to listen deeply. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Character is destiny." And that's what this entire journey has been about. Not learning how to sound virtuous, but learning how to become virtuous through the smallest details of language. Because your words aren't random. They're echoes of your inner world. Every time you say sorry instead of defending, help instead of ignoring, no instead of pleasing, you're reshaping your character. And character, once solidified, becomes unshakable. We began this episode asking, why are we drawn to certain people the moment they speak? Now you know. It's not charisma, it's not beauty, it's the calm integrity that language reveals, the quiet confidence of someone whose words and actions are one dot in a world obsessed with sounding clever. Be the one who speaks simply and means every word, because in the end, your speech is your soul. Made audible. So speak with honesty, listen with humility, and live so that every word you say becomes a reflection of who you truly are, not who you're trying to appear to be. That's the Stoic way. Not loud, not performative, but quietly unshakable. If this message resonated with you, if it reminded you that true strength lies not in appearance, but in character, then take a moment to reflect before you click away. Ask yourself, which of these 6 words do I struggle to say the most, and why? Leave your answer in the comments. Your honesty might help someone else see themselves more clearly. And if you believe the world needs more calm voices, more depth, and more wisdom, then share this video. Not for the algorithm, but for the quiet idea behind it. That words, when spoken with integrity, can still change lives. Subscribe to StoicCraft, where we explore the timeless lessons of Stoicism, so you can build a mind that stays steady, even when the world around you does in single quotes t. Because in the end, character always speaks louder than noise.